Yeah, so super, like I said, we're just blessed to have the amazing team that we have over yonder. Okay, here. All right, so as you all know, you know what the crazy kind of thing is in the real estate world, right? We've always been talking about the buyer broker agreement, right? Whether you're utilizing a buyer broker agreement or you're created your own, right? It's a sense of having that commitment with your buyer. Because how many times do we, especially for the veterans and the people that have been in the business for a period of time, how many times have you worked with buyers, then all of a sudden they go flip and write a contract with RPA with somebody else? Does that ever happen to you?
It's actually not happened to me, but I see how it
Yeah,
happens.
so see why she's on the piano? No, but sometimes it happens, right? But we work too hard to have our business be taken away from somebody else, right? And so now because of the lawsuit, this, that, and the other thing, it's like, okay, we have to have the buyer broker agreement, right? So now it's something that we should have been doing all along, but now it's something that we want to make sure that we pay special attention to, right? Because we want to make sure that each and every one of you are protected, your business is protected, right? With making sure that you get paid, because we only get paid when things close, right? When we actually close the escrow, then we get paid for our efforts, so on and so forth. And what a lot of people don't understand is everything that we do that we don't get paid for, right? A lot. I know it, and Lynette can attest to that at a high level right now. So with that said, before we start going, I wanted to point out one thing, right? We want to make sure that the buyer broker agreement is part of your deal, right? It's like when you go to meet with a seller, you go take you get a listing agreement signed, so on and so forth, because you have that commitment, you have that agreement that you're going to get paid for services rendered, right? So now on the buyer side of it, we have the buyer broker agreement. This is not a class about the buyer broker agreement. This is conversation amongst our panel, right? To how are they going to handle things, right? Right now, I had a conversation with Rich because he is on a board of directors meeting right now, but we are currently not making the buyer broker agreement mandatory at this time. However, with that said, by the beginning of next year, the CAR is going to make it, they're passing legislation it's going to be a required document. So y'all better just get in the habit of, utilizing the buyer broker agreement, because it protects you, it protects your business, etc.
So literally you will not be able to show somebody a house unless you have that agreement signed.
Well, I don't know what.
No, you can, but I don't think it's gonna be, you're not guaranteed compensation, right?
Correct.
But I mean, if they're,
You're bringing
if
the
you're
closing
gonna-
table, then you'll have that signed.
No,
That's.
no, it's even before that. Okay, so if you do not have a buyer, and we're gonna get into the conversations of how we're going to talk to people, talk to our buyers, because really, what's my theme been, since the beginning of the year? Sell your expertise, survival of the fittest. So this is an opportunity for you all to really take your business seriously and understand your value, your value proposition when talking. So with that said, before we get the conversation, the only way in the RPA page 2, right, you can check the box that says, hey, will the seller pay, the commission for the buyer broker agreement, blah, 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 right? But you have to have that agreement. If you don't have a signed buyer broker agreement, and the seller's not offering another, a cooperating broker commission, you can't ask for it. It has to be attached to the offer, right? So even if you want, let's say they're offering 1%, but you have an agreement with your buyer for 2.5%, you can have, make up the difference, either your buyer bring it in or requesting that the seller. But before you write the RPA, sorry, I have my back though, that you have to have that buyer broker agreement signed if you're going to check that box, right? Because we haven't encountered it as much in this office yet of people coming across limited or zero buyer broker cooperation commission. I know Studio City is seeing it more rapidly than we are, but it's out there. So get in the habit of selling your expertise, right? Practicing your trade, so on and so forth, and know how to have those conversations. So with that said, like I said, we need to sell our expertise and value in presenting the agreement. So we'll start with, we'll start with Jasmine.
So much better.
Okay, all right, so this is an opportunity for them, like I said, we're brainstorming, we're masterminding, etc. And then for you guys to one, observe and hear, and then if we have questions, we can answer those as well. But the reason why I'm starting with Jasmine is a relocation expert, right? Majority, what do you think the percentage? Because I know it's high percentage.
70-30, and the 30 is usually repeat business from those relocation clients who are in a resale, or purchasing another property, or family friend. I really don't do too much business with my family. I actually prefer it out because I want to stay,
Family.
correct. And there's a lot of emotions involved, but I'd say 70-30 is some sort of relocation, corporate, senior, or military.
Yeah, and then working with buyers, right? So she has to, one, build rapport, bring, state her values, why they should be using her. So really, how do you have that conversation with them out of the gate when you're just making your introductions and what does that look like?
So it depends on the relocation assignment and if I'm competing for the buyer to select me for their services. And that's something that was introduced probably about 18 months ago, where instead of the corporate client contacting me and saying, I have an assignment for you working with the buyer would actually call, and sometimes, or most of the time, it would be a number that just comes across your screen and you pick it up and it's go. Which I didn't love, but it got me used to the mindset that I need to compete for the business similarly like you do on the listing side. So initially with that, it's a very brief intake call usually that I set up, find out where they're coming from, what they're looking for, have they ever been to the state, if they currently own in their state, or are they a renter? Because I want to know their mindset. Have they purchased property before? Do they understand, what that is? Everybody has sticker shock when they come to California, because in most other parts of the nation, they've got these sprawling homes, and they quickly realize here that they can get a fraction of that in an area, or they may have to have a complete different conversation with their spouse, because most of the time it's one person in the family who's got the relocation contract. Very rarely, if there are partners or spouses involved, are they both found new jobs here. So I have that conversation with them, and I've explained to them, the dynamics of the relocation process, finding out what their benefits package look like. And a lot of times that will include like closing cost assistance, or a flat fee that they get to move. Explain to me how that works, because it's different from, Coca-Cola to, JPL or any of the companies. Each one has different, and right now they are all reevaluating their propositions to their employees because of what is going on nationwide with the buyer broker agreements. Before, the commissions were set by the corporate employer and trickle down effect of what comes. Right now, there's a lot of tax implications on what they can offer the corporate employee, or will they be doing a lump sum for them or not. But when I talk to them, after we have that initial call, we usually schedule for a second call. And that second call happens after I send them a buyer onboarding packet. And that is a 5-page document that I've created that is tailored towards relocation, so that I can really delve in and understand what it is they're looking for, their family dynamic, their timeline, of everything that has to do with their move. And it usually provides me the opportunity to right away set the tone that I have processes in place And even if they haven't selected me to be their agent by the end, they know there's another step coming into my process before I will actually schedule a time for them to book flights to come out here to start looking at property. Over the last 4 years, it's gotten difficult because there isn't inventory. And to have somebody fly across the country to see 2 homes that may not be available by the time they land is difficult at best. And submitting a blind offer is not something that most they don't want to see it. Although I've done it before, I have purchased homes and gone through all the inspections and handed keys to people when they arrive here, and it's like, I haven't slept, for 30 days, thinking, I really hope they love the house that I just purchased for them with their money. But, it's the commitment level of them filling out that paperwork and sending it back is something that shows me how interested they are in getting out here, taking a look at property so that we can establish our commitments to one another. And once I'm hired, the new piece that I'm going to incorporate is a buyer agreement package that we have. At any point, they can say, hey, I really don't like Jasmine, she sucks, and I don't want to work with her anymore. And it doesn't matter whether or not I have a contract with the relocation company. So the purpose of my buyer's agreement is one step before the buyer broker agreement. These are my commitments to you. These are the commitments I'm looking to, from you. This is how I get paid. And if all of this sounds good to you, then let me introduce this buyer broker agreement that's going to give it, all the legalities behind it. So that's a little bit of how the preliminary conversation goes. And I translate all of that into my buyers that I'm working for that are in the state. I resist every temptation. I was telling Linda to just get out there and show them the property initially, because there's so many times where I'm able to go back to that buyer onboarding packet and bring them back to center when they're desperate and conceding all these things that they loved and they wanted to have just because they're trying to find a home now. And I'm saying, is this really going to work for you? I don't want them to get into paying, $1,000 into inspections, realizing that, I really don't love this house. I'm coming from a place of being desperate rather than what we really needed for, myself and my family.
I love that. So you're setting the basis, like setting the expectations, like, hey, this is what I will do for you. And then in return,
this is the commitments I need from you. And, the relocation company is going to dictate how I'm going to have to pivot, whether or not the employer is offering a certain portion of commission in like a dollar amount, like we're going to $10,000 towards whatever commission, or no, it's completely on the buyer. So having those conversations and scripts is really important to me because I don't want, them to go into it blindly. And so many of the buyers right now that I'm coming into contact with have heard rumblings of something going on. They don't know exactly what it is, and I'm no attorney, but I can explain to them, based on the relocation council calls that I'm on, this is what we're seeing. You need to talk to your legal counsel and see how it could affect you. Across the board, no lenders are doing anything at this point, but there's a lot of lobbying that's going to be going on, I think, from the relocation companies to say, hey, can you step forward and help us, in some facet. So.
yeah. Well, and that's awesome too, that you get kind of an additional insider view, right? Where the relocation departments that you are working or companies that you're working for, are keeping you apprised.
Right. And I work with local, national, and international. I was blessed enough to move 2 families from England here last year, which was a whole other, learning process of visas and things that are changing and what's required and what's not required. So there's a lot of intricacies. I actually love this kind of stuff. I think this is good for our industry. I think that it's going to help us elevate our service, the service that we provide. I mean, I'm not saying in this office, but I come across so many agents that I don't even see the listing agent when we're submitting the offers. I don't meet them at closing. A lot of times we've closed and there's just the keys are in the lockbox. So, and I'm not that kind of an agent. I am at every showing. My son works with me. I've got good colleagues and friends that if I can't be somewhere, but if they're coming out to spend 4 days and we know we have to buy a house in those 4 days, I'm here, there, and everywhere between Santa Barbara and San Diego, literally. And if I have to spend the weekend there, it's just the value I bring. I absolutely love this job and career. I chose it later in life after a 17-year career in politics because I wanted to be able to invest the time. And I'm graded by the relocation companies. That's the other thing.
She's number one, but
On a scale of 1 to 5, if you get anything under a 4, they'll drop you. There's no, but none of that. So I've always had to have a love for paperwork and be able to back everything up that I'm doing and saying. So this for me, it seems like, okay, we're just going to pivot, but I could see for a lot of people, it's like, oh my goodness, where do we start?
Right.
Back at chapter 1, take it back to basics. What are we about? What are we offering?
So then you really have to, so let me ask you a question. So on your needs analysis for the buyer, I mean, it sounds, how many pages is it? Like,
5.
that's what you said. So how many questions? I mean, you go in depth.
Right. How do you imagine, what are the 2 features of a home that are most important to you? Why are they most important to you? What do you need the space for? Trying to delve in and understand, because our homes look really different here than they do, back east or across the nation. So I want to understand what is it they're looking for so that I can say, okay, here in California, we have this. The easy differences we see are, we have escrow here. Do you have closing agents there? Are you coming from a state where there isn't due diligence? So I have to learn about a lot of the different states, and I do have a lot of great relocation partners that I work with throughout all 50 states. And I put out that little silly, thing, relocation roundup every month where I'm literally going and studying about a state to learn, like, what's going on there, what are the draws there, so that I can teach myself, so I can speak their language. I don't expect them to become a realtor, but I want to be able to say, hey, how is this, working for you? And a lot of times I'll set up a call with their listing agent if they're selling their home in their state to understand, okay, what is the equivalent of this contingency period, so that I can structure my offer in a way that I'm not putting them, without knowing in jeopardy of losing something on the other end, or overpromising here and they haven't quite gotten to that point there. So a lot of different moving parts.
Yeah, so you're definitely doing, a deep dive, needs analysis, buyer consultation. And then it sounds like you have
The buyer agreement
your
that I would
buyer,
send,
your personal buyer agreement.
right? And
That
then
is
I
what
would
the
need to
segue.
get permission from the relocation company to say, hey, I want to introduce a buyer broker agreement. They are calling me almost daily to find out, are we mandated? Are we mandated? That's why I keep checking, what do you know? What do you know? What do you know?
Yeah.
Because there are some offices here and other brokerages throughout our state that just have said, we are mandating our agents to use a buyer broker agreement because we see it coming, get used to it. We're requiring you to do it.
Yeah, so as of this moment, based on my conversation with Rich yesterday, that we're not making it required as of yet, but it will be, like I mentioned, the beginning of 2025. So would the 3 steps that you have, and I'll get to the 3 steps that you have, so needs analysis, buyer consultation, your agreement, and then the next step would be the buyer broker agreement. If you have a client that is not a
Relocation.
relo, the same
Still,
process.
buyer intake, call.
Yep.
If I don't know that they're calling, they just happen to pick up the phone and say, hey, so-and-so referred you. I don't want to spend so much time because I kind of got to get my bearings straight usually. I'll set up a call, and then after that initial call, I will send them the onboarding packet. Once they send it to me, then at that point, I'll go over it with them. If we need to have another call, it's at that point, once that's done, then depending on their timeline, I may or may not set them up at a drip that time. I want them to want to work with me if they don't know me. So I need to give them an opportunity to just kind of get a feel for my energy and how I'm out there. I don't expect anybody to sign a buyer broker agreement who's not relocation, because they can't get on a plane to just come here and meet me for 5 minutes. We'll do a Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp if they're international, but I want to give them an opportunity, like Linda was saying, to get a feel for how I work with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had some clients who say, you know what, we just drive around sometimes and we want to pop in at open houses. And I respect that. I mean, I love to be there and want to be there, but to those clients, reluctantly, but I will hand them a stack of cards and say, hey, have at it, enjoy your Sunday afternoon. If you find it's a great time and the kids are not cranky and you want to stop in, use my card. But usually for the ones who are not relocation, after I've spent a day with them and I kind of get a feel, are we vibing? Do I want to work with them? Then I will send them the agreement form and the buyer broker.
Okay, awesome. Wonderful. So for the panelists, the other three panelists, right? Who uses a buyer broker agreement currently?
This is new to us too. So,
Well, I mean, we've had buyer broker agreements been there, but I'm just wondering if any of you have been utilizing it throughout your career at all.
I used to use it at the beginning, but not as much anymore. It hasn't been, it's been a while, but at the beginning, yeah, it was, and it was funny because it was pushed back, not pushed, but it was strongly recommended.
Yeah.
And, it took some clients or some people that came in were easier to put it in front of them. And some people they kind of balked at that, there's all these other agents that are doing it without it. So, but now we're revisiting that. So it's, it's kind of a learning process.
Mm-hmm.
well, and it really is the only thing that can protect us from them going to an open house and, being poached by somebody else. And that is the nature of this business at this point in time. So it protects us. I think that for me, I'm a relationship agent. I've always sold out of relationships. I like to build that rapport. I think the more time that I spend with them, so Jasmine, that wouldn't make sense for her, for somebody across the country to just go show them something without knowing. For me, I like spending a day because it helps me to really get their commitment level, to get an understanding of what it is they want. Because most of the time what they tell you they want is not what they really want. So, and then, the more trust that you build, the easier it is to get that kind of commitment, which I know I have to do at this point in time. So it's something that I think that I will feel more comfortable with, because of the way I do my business, which is getting to know somebody and creating those relationships. A lot of referral business, so people have already heard great things about me, coming from another client before. That's all helpful. And, again, at some point, if this is mandated, then everyone's going to be doing it, and it won't be normal for that buyer to be approached to do it. So
I think once it's streamlined, it'll make it a little bit easier for us all to have that conversation, rather than the one-offs, like this brokerage is doing it and this one is not. I find that'll make it a little bit more level playing field, that this is just one of the forms that, we do, and you have a choice here to hire us or not. But I wanted to ask, do you wait for pre-approval?
I don't know.
Because I didn't touch on
I
it.
know, I don't always wait for a pre-approval. It's definitely a question that I ask. Again, I love what I do like you do, and I have no problem spending the day with somebody. Before the end of that day, we'll get that information.
Right.
It also is a means of building rapport, because that's part of your team as a realtor, your broker, and your relationship with whoever your financial institutes are. That's part of your team and the value that you're bringing to that client. You can introduce them to one or two, or whatever you feel that you want to. You can pair them up based on, the relationship that you think they'll be able to bond. So for me, that's kind of part of building that. It's not just me, it's my team that will be supporting you, Mr. Buyer, through this, or Mrs. Buyer, through this whole process.
Yeah, so, because this, like Rich has said over the last year, I mean, this is coming, right? And then we know for sure this is mandated the beginning of next year. So how quickly the years go by, right? Time flies. So really, I would, my personal opinion is just act as though it's mandated already. Go ahead.
What I'm hearing from the relocation thing was the Department of Justice stepped up on the 15th of February to kind of rattle the cage a little bit of the initial lawsuit that started all of this several years back. And they want to make a ruling, with what I'm hearing, sooner rather than later, and make it black or white. Either it is legal for a seller to pay the cooperating brokerage, or seller pays their agent, buyer pays their agent. I don't know if they lay down that gamut, if that pushes that forward, not forward, how that works, 'cause I'm not a lawyer. But that was the ripple effect as of last week, that they were re-engaged and said, no, we don't want to table this anymore. We want to have that conversation again.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I don't know how that affects.
That's in the Justice Department, they can't make that decision.
Well, so, I mean, this is about antitrust. This is about, you know, the alleged companies colluding together to keep rates high, and this idea, that, and in some ways, we're complicit in the idea that realtors, you know, don't do a whole lot anymore, and that's not the truth. Those of us that, you know, work hard at it know that it's a tremendous amount of time, effort, hours, you know, that goes into consulting and getting somebody through to close, you know, it's.
And being that fiduciary for them.
Exactly. So I think this is an opportunity for us to reintroduce the value. I love your document that you're sending about, because it's her commitment to her clients. It's a, you know, I'm sure she'll share.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful idea. And for us to have, for us to understand what the lawsuit's about, and B, for us to understand that we need to communicate both to our buyers and sellers. The commissions are not fixed, they're negotiable.
And
you
they
know,
always have been.
And they always have been. Traditionally, you know, we got to the point where sellers were paying the buying agent's commission because it made it easier for them to sell their home. That may change, and buyers need to understand this. I just had this conversation with one of my listing, you know, yesterday, because she asked me a question and I had to go through explaining, you know, what it was about. So we have to be comfortable with understanding that, and, you know, creating value, which Jasmine has done with her documents. I'm more of a verbal, you know, visual, I'll be there kind of person. But I think it's important that we get the buyer broker agreement and start now. I agree with you, you know.
Yeah, because and to both of your points, right, this can elevate you as a real estate professional, right? If you truly treat going and meeting with your buyers the same way that you prepare and get ready to meet with your sellers, right? Same, you're showing value, you're letting people know, and it's, you know, it's time really to take it seriously, right? And presenting your value, et cetera, because your commission will be reliant upon it.
Well,
Right.
if they're paying you too, they're gonna be way more apt to interview you than just like any person showing
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've created like recently a trifold brochure of buyer terms, things for you guys to understand. It's just something simple that I will hand those out to an unrepresented buyer at an open house. As a matter of fact, I have a package I hand out to them, which I usually give them an entire folder. I don't do too many open houses, but when I do, I have a folder there. It's got, you know, that in it. It's got a little coupon copy and conversation. It's got a little bit of information about me, information about that house. You know, I'm not just handing them the flyer and say, see you. They're actually, from that point, they're saying, oh my God, this is how she works. She's handing us something. Now, they may take it and throw it away 5 seconds later, but I'm not worried about that. It's the impression I want them to have.
And it's important to you.
Right.
You know, it's your moral, your ethics, and your commitment to your client base. And I feel that same way too. You know, it's a lot of agents that want to be 9 to 5, and that's your prerogative to do that. I know that that's not my buyers. It's not their timeline.
Cindy.
Generally, they're working during that time. And I need to make myself available, especially in the middle of a transaction when they're, you know, when they need me.
7 to 9 p.m. the phone is usually like,
Yeah.
we put the kids to bed or whatever, you know.
So.
Yeah, because and thank you all, you know, all for sharing, because really this is an opportunity for us, Alan, we're getting to you next. That for us to really set best practices, right? Because sometimes it's so easy to be, you know, you treat the buyers differently sometimes than you do the sellers, and that time's done, right? We want to make sure that your commission and your livelihood is protected.
It's crazy because you're probably gonna spend more time with a buyer than you are with a listing.
So Alan, for you, you've been in the business for a long period of time. For a minute. And so what, I mean, you've seen, you know, when the buyer broker agreements first came out, you know, we were using those. So what changes are you making? What are you doing now? And what changes are you gonna be making due to this change?
I want to answer that question, but before I do, I want to ask the question of everybody here. So, how many of you have never sold a property? Okay, have you listed a property? Any of you?
I'm about to.
Have you bought a property? Anybody? Okay, so, you know, we're talking a lot about buyers and stuff here, and my business has been some buyers, about 30%, like Jasmine said. But by the way, ditto to everything you said. They're fantastic photo. But I work more
But.
as a,
And.
I'm more of a listing agent, number one. Jasmine has a different scenario than I have considerably, because she has many buyers sent to her through hard work, of course, but they're sent to her from a company. And now she has to kind of win their approval, but has not been doing that for a long time, but that's a new part for her. So for the rest of us, most of us, if you're getting a buyer, it's either for me from a previous sale, or I'm meeting them at an open house, or wherever I meet them. I'm buying a TV set and I sell the sales guy a house instead of him selling me a TV. I don't know. It comes from anywhere and everywhere. But I just wanted to show you guys something, first of all. We all signed the agency agreement, okay? For buyers and sellers. Very first document you sign. It's the simplest thing of all. And by the way, there's a whole box in here about buyer's agents, which is exactly what, pretty much what the seller says. A buyer agent can, with a buyer's consent, agree to act as an agent for the buyer only. And then basically, go ahead, fiduciary duty of utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty, same as the seller. Exercise reasonable skill and care, honesty and fair dealings, and disclose all the facts to the agent material that are materially affecting the sale. So this has been, since the beginning of time, the agency agreement has always been around. And it's gotten a little stronger over the years. So this is not any change from what we've done forever, okay? So really, it's these 3 little pages here. That's it, the buyer's agreement, okay? For me, I do a lot like Linda does. For me, I give like a day, I'll give you a day. If I'm meeting you as a buyer, and pretty much I'm obviously asking the questions of the buyer. You know, have you been pre-approved or pre-qualified? Mostly pre-qualified. But really to me, as Linda does too, I'm much more of a relationship agent. That's in Roger, instead of a transactional agent, because I know that most likely if I sell this buyer home, then they will probably buy a home with me, and I'll list their home and they sell them another home. And that's kind of what my business has been like for a long time, and it's been great. But the real thing about all of this, to me, and the whole thing about this, I envy you if you have not sold a house, to be honest with you, because this is not a big deal for you. This is just gonna be the way it is. Okay, for me, this is like learning to do a new contract. But it's not really a big difference in the contracts. We already signed as a listing agent. Very similar, a little bit different, but pretty similar. So it's not gonna be that big a deal. But as new agents, this is just what you're gonna do, and this is the way you're gonna learn it. So it's not that thing to be scared of. I think that what we're doing here is a little preemptive. There's a lot of terminology, and there's a lot of, well, the DOJ is gonna do this, or the state of California is gonna do this. We're gonna be required to do this. Look, nothing of that has happened. We are not even forced to do this. I don't even, I really, to be honest with you, I've been doing this 35 years. And I've never signed a buyer's broker agreement, okay? I would say in that time, I probably lost 2 buyers that I started with. Because it's, for me, I have this little thing here, I'm gonna read it just a second. It's not too long, but it's like, when I talk to people, it's like, nothing is what it seems. And they tell you all sorts of kind of things. You know, and a lot of it's a defense mechanism from them. So, you know, they don't know you, you don't know them, especially you're learning this. And so you just don't take the bait and just like run off and do all these crazy things. You just kind of work with these people. You don't try to convince them, hey, that they should buy a house. It's not that tough. And then also, so you basically, this is kind of a natural step. Because once you've started this transition in this relationship, they are most likely going to be working with you. And if this is going to be the way it is, it doesn't matter if you go to Remax or you go to some other company or Coldwell Banker, everybody's going to have this contract. So it's not going to be any big deal. Every buyer's going to accept it. And the biggest deal will be basically to me, is going to be, what will the listing agents be required to do? Will they be able to write 0 commission into it and not offer any commission? Or will they be able to give money if they want to? So that's kind of the whole thing.
I think the statement if they want to.
It's
You could
like,
do 0 right now. There's no obligation of the seller to pay the buyer's agent's commission period the end now. That's
exactly, and
okay.
It can be
it's,
negotiated.
it's
between
always been
parties.
that way, but in all honesty, as a newer agent many years ago, that really wasn't what happened. We said it was, and we really did that. However, there was a number pushed at us really hard. And it was said that you can't take listings below this number. That's flown out the window for listings and for buyers. So there's not that kind of requirement anymore.
And the thing is, these fees, they really change as the market changes. I mean, it's hard to sell a house. Sellers are thrilled to pay you whatever you want. They'll pay the buyer's fee. You know, they just want to get their house sold. Now, in the last, 5 years plus, it's been very easy to sell a house. So there's all this stuff.
Exactly. I mean, you get phone calls. I mean, obviously you're doing some kind of advertising, maybe social media or something. You get phone calls from buyers about a house, you have a listing maybe, or just out of the blue because you've been marketing, and you really need to get them in a face-to-face meeting. It's just like a listing. You're gonna be doing the same kind of things. You want to talk to them, and what is it you're gonna do is basically, what is their motivation? Why do they want to buy this house? And then for me, like I said, I don't necessarily hit them up with the money too hard the very first day. I'll give them a day. I want to see if this relationship is what I think it is, number one, and number two, do I want to work with them? I don't know, sometimes, and that's not always the case, but, and I'll work with most anybody. If they show me that they have motivation, that they really want to, and they actually have financial ability to do it. Because I have a feeling that if I work with them a couple of months, maybe 3, I'm going to close a deal. But if they don't have any motivation, or they just have all these wants, but they don't really have needs, big difference. You guys probably know this, right? We've been taught this. I want this, I want a 3-bedroom house, I want a colonial, I want this. And what do they buy? They buy a 2-bedroom house, beach house at someplace else. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Don't take what people say to you as word for word, okay? And for me, this whole thing about talking to people about doing this, what's the biggest challenge? It's not really other agents, and it's not really what your company tells you, and it's not your leads or even the current market. It's basically your current self and worldview. What are you? Who are you? Be yourself. If you feel comfortable about doing this business and you don't have commission breath, which is basically, I just want to work with you to make the money,
Think
you
about
will
that a second.
find that people will want to work with you too. They want you to work. And so I said, Roger, so let's say, for example, and I'm going to use a basic number, let's say the commission, whatever it is a 0.5% less than what you want. So what are you doing to get that other 0.5% that you wanted them to pay for you? So if it's $1 million, it could be for the buyer side, if it's a difference in a 0.5 point, you're gonna be working about $5,000. What more are you going to provide to this buyer for that $5,000? What are you doing? Besides what you always do, how are you going to value yourself more? So it's something you gotta, it's all within you. It's not what the buyers want or the sellers want. What are you predicting? Yes, you have to know your stats. You want to look at new listings all the time when you're out caravanning. All these things just are basics. And it's not what we're going to do for them. It's what we're going to get done for them. Because I want to get, I really pitch when I do my motivational thing. I really try to get down to the basics. One of my last buyers that I worked with was the reason they wanted to buy a house is they wanted a place to have their child. They wanted to have a child. They didn't have any kids. They wanted to have a house, and that's what they do it. So even when we were fighting and you couldn't get deals because low inventory or we got bid out, the goal was, and I kept it on, I kept pretty much my foot on their neck. Listen, the reason we're doing this, you want this really badly. Yes, yes. So that was the motivation. And I kept them on that track. And I don't think, I never asked them for this. I don't think it would have been any problem doing it because that was the motivation and it really stuck and it just keeps going. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's really, all these things really, really simple, be positive and, that's pretty much it for me.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I foresee with a lot of my buyers, the last 3 buyers that I sold houses to were all first-time buyers, all $1 million, $1.4 million range. But it would have been an issue for them only because they had to come up with a certain amount of money to put down and closing costs. And then for me to ask them for another 25, 30 grand, it's a lot of money for them. So what's your advice when I've never had them sign a buyer agreement? It's always been about relationships for me. And I never once questioned them going to anybody else. So I never had a reason really to ask them for it. Now I feel like I may start to need that, obviously. So what's my add value to them when I'm asking them to spend another 30,000? I mean, there was a house in Thousand Oaks last week that a client of mine was interested in that had no commission for the buyers. The only one in Thousand Oaks. And they happened to want to see it because it's under $1 million. And so I called the agent and I said, listen, I have a buyer, but the problem is that they're barely scraping together all the funds. They have what they need in this range. They're pre-approved. They have everything. But then if your seller isn't paying commission, they don't even want to see the house. And this house is a great fit for them. And I said, I can write it into the offer and then ask them to pay, like take it off the offer if they decide they like it. But like, what's your suggestion? And she's like, oh my God, I've had so many calls for this.
I was gonna say, every call they're getting. is
I've had
the
so
same
many calls
question.
for this. People aren't showing the house. What do you suggest I do? Do you have a suggestion? La, la, la. I said, yeah, I have a suggestion that they offer to pay it.
Exactly, well, that's.
But- And so they
and-
ended up, they changed it back, but
course.
they said only 2%, because I said, I can't show my client because my client is not going to see the house and they are not going, I've been working with them for 6 months. They're not going to not pay me because that's how they feel about me.
Right.
And now we're gonna sit and wait. So they ended up changing it. But like, I see that as a problem with first time buyers in that range under $1.5 million.
Well, like I said, this is all pretty different.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's going to come from, maybe in the lender's loan, it's gonna be added percentages that the loan will now be encrusted in that with the commission. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but
It's not like, it's just the conundrum, because it's like, I felt bad, because there's like one listing.
Right.
And the one listing in that range doesn't offer, and now my client's like, well, no, so.
But-
So they were
But-
so.
You had already created the relationship so much with your
Yes.
client that they understood, and that's part of the conversation, You
would-
only, Mr. Buyer, we can only look at homes that have a commission available
Yes.
for me. That's your choice, you know, so this is a start where we start to educate both our buyers and our sellers. The fact that that listing agent asked you and didn't get that could be a problem when they took the listing is just,
Well, they changed it.
Yeah.
The next day they
Yeah.
changed it and added
it's
it
just
because she's
ridiculous.
like,
But these are,
I do have an idea.
these are the conversations that we have to have because at some point this may be mandated. We may have to get our commission only from our buyers.
Right.
We don't know.
It could be a gift, it could be coming from however they wanna come up with it.
It may, and it, yes, it changes everything, well, but guess what, kids? We have to pivot, you know, every lawsuit gives us another piece of paper that we fill out to protect ourselves and our clients.
I mean, there was a company, if you remember, called Rex a few years ago, and they didn't pay a buyer's commission. Well, they're gone. You know, I don't see how the government can mandate that a seller cannot pay a buyer's commission. I mean, that was gonna be years before that ever happened. That has to go through the courts. They
We're here
can't
now.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
again,
say that.
but
It's all negotiable.
antitrust is a very large moneymaker for the government, and it's there to protect the consumer, and the idea is to allow healthy competition in order for the consumer to be able to get the best possible deal that they can get.
Why should the seller be paying the buyer's agent when they can't dictate the quality of work that buyer's agent's gonna do? I heard an entire call about that from that perspective,
But they
and boy,
don't
that
have
was an
to.
eye
The
opener for
point
me.
is, they don't have.
And I'm a buyer's agent.
But listen, and we can fight it all we want to, if it
But yeah,
happens, we have to deal with it, so
Yeah.
get over it,
Yeah,
get over
so-
the, whether we like it or we
Okay,
don't like it.
let's
Yes.
stop for a second, you know, because we don't wanna get into
we're not gonna
the
do that.
weeds and all that kind of stuff, or the reeds, whatever we call it, right?
Weeds,
But we want, this is to be set back, best practices is how are we going to have the difficult conversations? Or it doesn't even have to be difficult, how are we going just to sell our expertise, right? The survival of the fittest, and make sure that the agents in Keller Williams, Calabasas are the flippin' ass best out there. Right, that you guys are out there to protect, you out there to educate, that you bring tremendous value, that it's not even gonna be an issue. And remember, everything is negotiable. Just because they offer zero doesn't mean that you can't ask for it,
Which she did.
right?
Yeah.
So Chris Vogt, who is Chris, do you have anything you want to interject? I know you do.
Well, yeah, I have a whole bunch of things I'd interject, but we don't have time. So, here's the interesting part. And so Alan, I appreciate your comments. Lynette, I really appreciated your question. Because for those of you who were in the room for that couple of days when I was down with Kyle at the end of November, remember me taking you through, hopefully remember, a little scenario. And ironically, I actually used the scenario that Lynette just brought up. You know, so for getting the DOJ and all these other lawsuits, what would you do today to articulate and ultimately demonstrate your value to get a buyer to pay you 25 or 30 grand? Okay, so I would concur with Alan in that, you know, like forever, our industry candidly has struggled with articulating its value proposition. Okay, I was in a Coldwell Banker office with a client a few weeks ago, and I overheard the new CEO for Coldwell Banker talking to the agents about them defining their value to the consumer. So let's forget buyer for a second. There's a real question in our industry: what is our value to the real estate consumer? So forget buyer, forget seller. I want you to think about this not only as because we've thought about this as a listing agent. And one of the things that I used to do as a manager, when Stephanie was one of my agents, you know, 100 years ago, I would do this 1 minute of silence, and I would have my agents write down on a piece of paper, what exactly is your job as a listing agent, right? So on the listing side, one of the things that we say in our business practice up here is that the job of a highly qualified real estate professional from a listing side is threefold. It's marketing, negotiation, and transaction management. Now suddenly we're in this, well, how do we define what our value is as a buyer's agent? Well, it's really the same thing with the exception of marketing, because we really don't do marketing for buyers, right? So our fundamental value to the real estate consumer, buyers and sellers both, is in our negotiation ability and our transaction management ability. Our industry has handed over the transaction. No offense to TCs, we use one, but she's not the expert we are. Right. So regardless of how this shakes out, I would begin to build a presentation. I would have a very strong pre-buyer questionnaire that you would gather information as you ordinarily do, but I would make gosh darn sure that right now, as you're bringing on your next buyer, that you're beginning to ask them questions about what they're looking for in an agent. Because to be very candid, most consumers don't know how to choose an agent. How do they choose them? Oh, I like them. I bonded with them. They don't know if we're any good at our job. So I would include in your pre-buyer package before your presentations, 10 questions every buyer needs to ask. And then ask yourself, if you were a consumer and you were a buyer, what questions, if you were interviewing an agent, what questions would you ask an agent? I can tell you one of the very first questions I would ask an agent: do you actually understand the real estate purchase agreement and everything that's associated with it? Well, let me ask you that. When's the last time you had a consumers don't inherently know to ask that. Right? They say things like, oh, I want somebody I get along with, I can trust, blah, 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 blah. What I want to know is, do you know what the HELL you're doing? Right? So what you need to, what we are doing, I'm telling you what we're doing as a small brokerage up here in Northern California, candidly competing against very large brokerages and winning all day long. We're articulating a different message than everybody else in the marketplace because everyone else is saying the same thing.
I love that. And that's why, our motto, right, Chris, that we've discussed and that I'm sharing with the office is sell your expertise.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So if we could get this quick show of hands in the room, raise your hand if you're a highly competent real estate professional. How many hands went up? Hold on. Yeah. Okay. So here's the deal. So all you got to do is increase. So I'm on a committee up here for the local board, and I'm trust me, they love having me because I'm like, we've got to begin to instill competence in our people. Hey, Alan, you got me by 2 years, Alan. You've been doing this for 35 years.
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever run into an agent who isn't really well versed in the contract and the transaction and everything else? Do you have any of those in Calabasas?
Never.
You're right. So that's a funny thing, and it's not funny. And many of those people, in some cases, are the top agents in the marketplace based on production. But that doesn't make them the best agent, does it? No. So our competency level, and I'm not running for a popularity contest. I want to help people. I want to help people in this industry, and I'm going to tell what I believe to be the truth based on my experience as an agent, a broker, a manager, president of a very large region. And that is, our expertise is not on all the fancy billboards and everything else. It's in our core competency. Do you know the real estate purchase contract? So that's one of the reasons we actually have, and this is, so what you're going to do is you're going to market this around you're going to market your competence. You're going to take a red envelope. So whether it's a buyer presentation or a listing presentation or an open house, you're going to take and have a really strong cover letter. And then you're going to take a copy of the RPA, the residential purchase agreement, and you're going to stick it inside of them. You're going to have a bunch of them on hand. And on the outside, it's going to say, caution, contents of this package should only be handled by a qualified professional. Trust me, that's a conversation starter with a customer because they're going to go, I ain't seen this before. Exactly. Do you mind if I share with you? And then you begin to not just articulate your competence, but then also demonstrate it.
Yep, I love that. Alan, you had a
Yeah,
question?
just a couple of quick things. Number one, it's really, it's their motivation, but it's my confidence in myself. You guys,
Yeah.
if you do this, you get more and more confident. So it's not like, oh, I'm freaking out that I'm doing my first listing or my first buyer. Agree. Everybody's going to do this. By the way, you may fail too. So you don't let that worry you, just keep going. But it's your confidence in yourself. But I do caution one thing, and that is, don't make yourself commoditized, which I mean is like, well, I will do this, this, and this. And to work with me, you have to pay me X amount of money. Oh, I really like that. Hey, I'll get right back to you tomorrow. So then they find another guy who does A, B, and C, and D and E, and he charges even less, like 0.5% less. And the guy goes, oh, I love this, you're gonna be my agent, I'll call you right back. The next guy, he does like 3 more things, and he's even doing it less than the second guy. So don't do that. You just have to be the person who's confident, and here's the thing. You're the person that's going to get things done. You don't have to explain every single thing you do. I get things done for my clients. This is the reason I've been in this business. This is the reason I'm here for you. I will get what your needs are, and let's get them done together. That's it.
Yeah, awesome. Omid.
You know, all I'm hearing is like, it is the most important time for your value proposition.
Yep.
You know, like, this is when, like Gary said, that it's a skill set market. It's not like, you know, it's all about skills. And it goes back to like a conversation I was having with a client. It was a referral. And the guy who referred me the client was saying, that guy's like, well, I don't know, I had to explain to him what you do. And the way he put the word to that referral is, you know, if you find the right agent, they can be better than the listing agent, you know, so they're well worth their time. And, you know, kind of took me back to like, why was this guy, you know, kind of defending me and putting this good word out there? And it was like, we were in an REO with him, and it was difficult. Like, it was conversations at 9 o'clock, going through the inspections. And, you know, like, I was toe to toe with him, you know, like, there wasn't a time where his phone was, or I was too busy. So I think it's just one of those times that, you know, you really got to go in. And when you do get a buyer, what are the things, what is it that increases your odds of getting a buyer representation signed? That means, like, right from the get-go, are you asking the right questions? Like, for me, when I'm looking at this, my reviews are going to be a big part of how I'm going to sell, because I always get my reviews after the sale. But every one of them, like, I got a review. Alan called me the next day. He's like, "What, did your mom write that?" I'm like, "No."
No, I wrote it.
But you know, like, that's the kind of level of, you know, commitment, and you can tell right away. You get a buyer, like, instead of just shoving the agreement in front of them, hey, you know, this is what we got to do. Give them a sample of what you got to give them. You know, do the search, ask the question. What kind of house are they looking? What areas? So this whole time I'm like, you know, this is all about value proposition. If you want to, you know, increase your odds of getting that and getting paid and getting the 30,000 full pop, you know? So kind of what I've been thinking about.
Yeah, and I would just,
Question back.
oh, yeah, Carolyn's been trying to ask a question for a while.
I was just gonna say, it's kind of a great thing if they do require the buyer broker, because after you know, sit with your buyer at lunch, and you tell them, you know, the process and what your value is. This is the buyer broker, and explain to them, you know, whether I'm gonna represent you, you're gonna be represented in a buyer broker. So if I'm gonna represent your fiduciary rights, you know, duties to you. I'm gonna be 100% committed to you, as opposed to if you went with a listing agent, it's still signed it. Their fiduciary duty is to the seller. So basically, they're just writing paperwork for you. So that's a point to the big value.
And you know, we're not seeing it as much. I mean, I've been looking, I'm not seeing that many listings. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not seeing them drop that much. Like, it's
There was
still,
only one in all of Thousand Oaks.
Yeah.
And I happened to run into it. And then they changed it the next day after that whole thing with me.
right? And I'm guessing like a lot of these, you know, the sellers know about this, but they're kind, I think maybe it's where we're at. They're like, hey, you know, whatever they're doing, they're earning their money, and then why wouldn't they? So, so far, I'm not seeing it. Maybe a little more 2%ers than before, but still, you know, everything's still the same.
Well, what's interesting too is, you know, I mean, I know we're talking about the buyer consultation, the buyer agreement, et cetera, but then it's really, how are we handling it with our sellers, to your point, right? So make them understand as well, hey, if, you know, it's your prerogative, it's your right, you know, to offer, not offer, offer less, more, whatever it is that you want to do. But if you opt to not have offer, cooperating broker commission, understand that it will, reduce the eligible pool.
And
like
I
you
have a
mentioned.
separate form that I have on the flip side,
Yeah.
that I do speak to them and let them know, these are possible repercussions that you could see. I'm not saying that you would, or reintroducing it back. There's gonna be several agents who maybe aren't in a market, then they're not gonna go back and say, well, let me check what commission they're offering now. I don't think that in 10 years, I've ever checked first to see what commission is being offered to me, whether when I was representing a buyer, it was always about the home they wanted to see. I think that we are going to be walking a slippery slope of having that commission breath come to light real.
It's up front and
Yeah.
center now on all of the syndicated sites.
Right.
The VA is up
I check
front, yeah.
everything now. I'm new, way newer than you are, but I mean, I go right there. I check to find out what I'm dealing with.
Right.
Well, when you hand them an MLS sheet too, here's the listing, and they take a look at it, it says right in there that there's the commission, so you have done your due diligence here by telling them how much you're getting. So if you give them the listing paperwork, it's right there, and, I also like this one, if they get all freaked out here, item 4C. Either buyer or broker may cancel this agreement by giving written notice to the other. So there's an out here for them if it gets to that point. I don't think it's gonna happen, especially you've created this, because they know you're in a business. You don't work for free. Nobody works for free. They don't work for free. Why would they expect you to work for free? Just have to figure out what the number's gonna be.
The question for Cindy, since we've got a lender, what are the odds of like that being rolled into finance, like
So
zero?
the way I envision it, especially in Lynette's scenario, if you present me with a contract that says seller's not gonna pay a commission, and then another contract that says buyer's gonna pay the commission, then I'm gonna have to see if the buyer has enough money to pay that commission and, close the loan. And if they don't, then they're not gonna get the loan.
So it's requalifying
Yeah.
them again.
So what I would suggest in that scenario, it may or may not work, I mean, it definitely would, if there's multiple offers, it'd be challenging, but otherwise, I would say maybe tell them, look, keep your sale price and give them a commission, give them a credit to cover their commission, because you gotta move the house and this buyer and many others won't have the cash.
Are you seeing any buyers out there lowering their purchase price?
No, I'm seeing them. I mean, I've had 3 buyers in the last few months. None of them are willing to
To-
lower the price.
right.
My buyer told me specifically, I'd rather not see that house and you get paid than go look at that.
Because
house.
you've established a relationship and that's what, we have to come back to. The best practice is not to get so caught up in what you need and not then listen to what your buyer's needs are. It's really important that you establish that relationship.
It's the trust.
You're not,
Well, so you build a relationship, everybody has a relationship.
and then you solidify it in writing.
Correct. But what I was gonna say too, is it's not just relationships. They know that she is in, with all of you too, but they know that Lynette is going to go through hell and back to make sure that that she has the expertise, that she's gonna make sure it closes and she's gonna protect them every step of the way. And those are added benefits to the relationship. As much as we're talking about relationships, which I'm told everything is relationships, right? However, with that, you have to have your expertise, right? And they have to know that you are gonna go to bat with them and then you're gonna protect them through the entire journey, right? Because if they just like Lynette, but they don't feel that she's competent, then that's never gonna happen either, no matter how great of a relationship they have.
It can get hairy in a transaction. And your clients don't always see what you're going through to
Right.
keep that in escrow. Or you've got a crazy listing agent that's yelling at you. at 10 o'clock at night.
We shouldn't just assume that we'll get pushback from the buyer broker agreement.
Yeah.
Christine Wheeler, I'm gonna call you out, girl, has been using the buyer broker
Yeah.
agreement for the last several years and is not getting any pushback. As a matter of fact, those clients who refer her to the next client say that she's gonna be sending you this form.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to sign it before you go out and take a look at something, so it doesn't need to be,
It's
you
not
know,
as scary as
scary.
it sounds.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just the
definitely the way-
confidence, as he said.
Yeah, it's
in
definitely the
presenting.
way that you talk to your client and present it. I don't talk to my clients like, here, sign it. It's more of, just like everyone says, right? I do a buyer presentation, just like a listing presentation. I don't just go like, here you go, Cameron, let's go see this home. No. Cameron, our next step is we're gonna sit down because I really wanna know exactly to make sure that we're both compatible. Because in this conversation, I'm gonna either you hire me or I either hire you, right? And then at that point, I have my lender with me, right? I speak with the lender, I let the lender do their thing. Once I know that they are willing to do all the paperwork with the lender, I already know, there you go, I'm halfway there. Then I do my thing. Then everything else, I have them do the whole motivation. I have them agree with me with everything that I'm gonna do. I do my value proposition, and then I ask them the question: do you see me as your agent to hire me so that I can get you to your point A and point B within this time frame? Right? And they're like, yeah, I don't see why not. Perfect. By the way, so this is my charge. This is how I charge my clients. So I charge 2.5%. There's gonna be some time, there's gonna be listings, especially with renters, and this has happened. I tell them, so is it okay, would you like to, if some listing agents will only charge 2%, would you be comfortable of me just showing you only properties at 2%? Because if not, then you will pay me the extra 0.5. And guess what they said? Oh, no, show me anything that's 2.5 because I don't want to pay out of pocket. With my renters, same thing. By the way, and this just happened recently, I said, by the way, I charge you, this is my past client. I told, hey, by the way, I charge 2.5, as you know. Unfortunately, this listing right here shows that they're only paying 500. So it's either we can do two things. You can go ahead and go to the listing agent and let them help you get this property, or I can definitely do and help you. The only thing is, are you comfortable enough to pay me the difference? You know, he said, I'm comfortable enough to pay you the difference. How much is the difference? Perfect, it's 1,100. Here's the BRBC, sign it, and I show them the property.
That's awesome.
So I don't, like, for me, the way I do it with my clients, I don't, just like, if you do it correctly, you don't go like,
Resist
here's
the
the
urge.
sign it.
Yeah, resist
right?
the urge to jump in the car and show them
No,
something the minute create
I
that.
don't, I actually do, I mean, all the PC agent knows how I teach them how to do it. You guys don't just show them, even if, let's say, if Linda said like, oh, well, I wanna see this 1, 2, 3 properties, perfect, Linda. We're definitely gonna go see it. By the way, after the showing, do you have like a few minutes to sit with me? Because I definitely wanna know exactly what you're looking for. Because at that moment in time, that's when I ask her to sign the BRBC, especially if she's already pre-approved. One, if they're pre-approved, I ask them right away, perfect, hey, can you send me a pre-approval letter so that I can go ahead and call your lender, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and the properties that I show you, right? So that's how I do my best practices in regard to having them the BRBC sign. I've heard some agents that they send it over with like the lending packet. I've never, ever told any of my agents to do that because again, if they read that, the BRE before is totally different from our BRBC. Totally different if you guys read it. So the BRBC now, it really says, hey, you're paying me, you as a buyer, paying me out of pocket. And if one of those buyers tend to like read it before doing that DocuSign, you will get in trouble, because you'll be like, what the hell, right? So I always like, no, you guys have to have that as hard as that conversation goes, you have to have that conversation, because you don't want to know like, hey, you are hiring me, I am gonna give you my full 1,000%, right? And just for what like Cindy was saying in regards to, it's kind of just like asking for when they're getting like an HOA, right? We ask the lender, hey, what's their maximum with an HOA? So now our conversation with the lender, hey, what's their maximum? Because now if they have to pay my commission, right? What's gonna be our maximum like purchase price now? Cause now they're gonna tell me, so it's the same thing, like, okay, now it's not just an HOA, now we have to ask, kind of like, you remember when we had COVID? Like, remember how easy it was for people to get pre-approvals? I can show it to you until we have a pre-approval and have the agreement signed.
And the
open,
PED.
And the
Don't forget
stupid
the
PED,
PED.
right? All of our buyers got
That's so funny.
freaking approved, like without anything, pre-approved and POF, like everything that we asked them.
Yeah.
We can't see it until we have a pre-approval and a PED and your POF.
Yeah.
And this COVID sign for every single freaking property.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be the same thing. It's just now, it's more like, hey, now I wanna get paid from you.
Hey,
That
Chris,
conversation isn't harder than the exam we studied.
Yeah.
I know you wanted to say something, Lisa. Chris,
What's that?
you came unmuted, so I thought you wanted to say something.
No, well, so one of the little field studies that I've been conducting is asking a lot of my friends that are still working for major brokerages and or compliance officers. And the question I've been asking is this, of your total commissions every year that get paid into your real estate office, what percent of those are actually paid by the buyer? And the reason I asked that question is because and so at our time at Keller Williams, that was actually the first crucible that we were in where agents, you know, I don't know if it was over the majority or not, we're actually getting buyer broker signed. But the difference is, and the last young lady that was speaking, which I thought was really great, by the way, I think the question is, as the gap grows, right? So again, going back to Lynette, if we're talking about $500 or $1,500 or $25,000, that's where, and I do agree with Alan, you know, we don't have to run out and panic in the streets, although there is more and more. There was a message from the Sierra president, which I don't, you know, dwell in all that stuff. But I think it makes sense to begin to prepare your presentations, whether you're talking about the buyer or the seller, to make sure that you have a system to which you're walking people through. Because to Lynette's point, and we are relationship people. I mean, the people we get, we do 99% referral business, very high customer satisfaction rate. And even though we have great relationships, we still get listing agreements signed. Now, I know that might sound funny, but think about this. If our thought is, well, the relationship's going to save it, well, then we don't even need to get a listing agreement signed, right? So there's a reason we've gotten listing agreements signed historically, because we want to make sure we get paid, right? So I would be just making sure that you have a system, you actually begin to practice your presentations for those situations that you might not otherwise get. Because the people you're going to get the people that love you, even if you don't know what you're doing. If they love you, they're going to use you and probably pay you. What we're talking about here really is, though, the people on the margin. If I were a buyer, to be very candid with you, I would interview agents. So it's interesting. Sellers have historically interviewed agents. I guess nowhere in the real estate book that was given to the customer was it ever, hey, buyers, you should go interview agents. They know you, they like you, they walk into an open house, whatever. So that's where it's important, I think, that we really have the steps in a presentation, including, you know, asking for the order. So I don't think it's going to change tomorrow afternoon, but I'm not sure. There is a message from the Sierra president that came out a few days ago, and the Department of Justice on one of the suits, and I can't remember which one. There were so many. But there was a reasonable settlement agreement that the real estate community offered, and the DOJ issued a letter of instruction and said, nope, we're not doing that. So the DOJ is hostile toward our industry. That I can tell you. Now, does it take 10 years for that hostility to go into something that's going to affect us all? I don't know, but we made a decision from day one that we weren't going to wait. There was an attorney that I heard once upon a time. And he said that he was asked the condition of the legal climate in real estate. And his response was, he said, I feel kind of like the guy that just fell off the 40th floor of the hotel balcony. And about halfway down, he's thinking to himself, so far, so good. And that's kind of where I feel in my 33 years watching where we're at right now. Again, we're slightly paranoid. We're not, you know, we're doing business as usual. And trust me, on the backside, we're prepping for the worst case scenario. I think I don't think it's wise to not prep for the big storm. But that's just me.
No, I appreciate that, and you know, it's just a matter of always, like I said, always being prepared. And Gary Keller and everybody's been talking over these last few years, really, it's a skills-based business, and the skill-based business, and skill-based business. And so that's why, you know, Chris and I were just like, okay, the message is survival of the fittest and sell your expertise. So that's why we're taking all the extra steps that we can to keep you, for those of you that really want to practice your trade, take your trade seriously and ride the wave, because there's always something, right? There's the market's up, the market's down, the market sideways, the market whatever, right? But if we can make sure that we're prepping each and every one of you to be on top of your game, even if this wasn't happening, you want to bring as much value and give yourself the highest chance of success on a daily basis anyway, right? So having us all be together and lock arms and say, hey, what is the best practices for this? How should we do this? You know, and really like taking into account, like, I know Chris he has his packets like you do, right? But like taking the time to be like, okay, even if we have the relationship, it's like, hey, you know what? There may be certain things I just don't know about you, right? What your deepest, darkest desires are and everything for your house, what your wants are, your needs are to the level, what kind of community you want to live in. And if you are, because sometimes when it comes to friends too, or close family friends, sometimes if you are complacent about it versus showing your highest level of expertise, they may not go with you. They'll go with someone that shows exactly what they're going to do, even though you may do it and you don't share it with them. Right? Because I've had people lose listings or lose buyers on that because they took it for granted a little bit. So we're just doing everything we can to elevate, right, your business. Right.
Hey, Steph, on that. So if you look at many other businesses and practices, and I'll use the medical field. Now, granted, I don't ever compare yourself to a doctor, because we're not even close, unless you happen to be one. We're not, right? It's open book test, you know, didn't commit a felony, over 18, and we passed with a C- on 100 question state exam. Okay, that's not being a doctor. But where a doctor analogy comes in that we have always used is character and competence, right? So do I want a nice doctor, somebody that I can relate with, everything else? Absolutely, yes. We're going through some stuff right now with our family, and I can tell you, one of the beautiful things about the doctors that we're working with is they are caring, they're loving, they've got great bedside manner. And though, what we really cared about when we started to look into the doctors for these procedures was, were they the absolute best? To be very candid, if they were a jackass, but they were the best, I'd take a jackass who's their best over really nice and incompetent. So what we want to be is high character and high competence. And when you read that segment of the agency disclosure, and I think Alan alluded to this, I would recommend you memorize that, because the first part of that says that we have a fiduciary to utmost care. Well, if I were a buyer, I'd be saying, well, what the heck does that even mean? What does that mean? And how do you fulfill that role, Lynette or Stephanie or, you know, Roger or Alan or Chris? What does that mean? Utmost care, right? And by the way, for those of you who were there, that embedded in that fiduciary duty that we have is actually the word trust. It doesn't say trust, but because it says character and competence in that one little sentence in the agency disclosure. So that's what our whole, when we talk to our customers, we tell them that our job as a buyer's agent is multiple fold. With our highest duty is meeting our duty as a fiduciary to them. And then we say, do you mind if we share what we mean by that? That's actually how we actually speak with our clients, and they appreciate it. And then we show them the important parts of the contract. We tell them that we're the expert in the contract. However, we familiarize themselves, you know, as is. You know, if I see as is one more time in the MLS, I'm going to barf, because it's already in the freaking contract.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. And then we also keep a little sheet that's called signs of incompetence. And we redact people's names, but we actually take language out of poorly formed counteroffers and poorly formed RPAs. We keep stacks of them. Is this making sense? It's evidence. It's evidence. It's evidence that not all agents are created equal. So I think the bad news about being part of associations, and I'm not talking about ditching the associations, but somehow it's like, oh, we're all the same, and we're not.
Yeah.
We're just not. So.
Yeah. I love that, Chris. Hey, Christine, you have your hand up.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Steph. This is so great today. I'm so sad that I couldn't be there because I'm at home dying laughing and going, yeah, to everybody that's talking there.
I can hear her in my ear.
Right? I mean, and yeah, especially Jasmine, with the deals that I've been doing. So just just a couple real quick things I'd like to say. I got something from every single person that spoke today, so I super thank you so much. And boy, Chris, right on for what you're saying. To me, I since the mention or thought of that this was coming down the pipeline, I don't know, 3 years, I have always used a buyer's agreement contract. I haven't done one deal, and I've done quite a few this last few years without one. And to me, it is about relationship, but a relationship is two-way. So that is when I explain the buyer agreement to someone, I say, listen, this is meant on both of our parts. I'm committing to working for you. You're committing that I'm your agent. And having my value is, and I don't mean this in a cocky way, because you guys know all my training came from Keller Williams, really, even though I had my license so long, was that I know the contract. And what a joke, listening to Chris, what he's saying, and Rich will vouch for me, the incompetency of everyone else in the industry, really. I've had so many agents that are pathetic. I can't believe that they're agents. I really can't. One of them, I had the most recent one was an offer, $87,000 over ask. That's the market in Orange County, which I've been doing quite a few deals out there recently, and gave a no continuous removal for appraisal, gave a 17-day escrow, gave, blah, 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 a SIP, everything. The agent, who's been in the industry a very long time, called me at 10:30 to say he presented the offer, but he was really worried about the price and the appraisal. And I said, what do you mean? I have a contingency removal in there. What? So this is what I'm getting. I am getting agents who are looking at an RPA, looking at the price.
Yeah.
That's it. They're not looking at anything. They don't even know how to read it. And negative for me, because I actually thinking about taking this guy to the ethics board because he did not present my contract as it was. And the price, the closing price, less, 20,000 less than my offer. And so there's so much of that. It's so frustrating. But what it shows also to my clients are, man, I'm on it. I know how to, like, here's another example. Avids. We fill out our Avid, we fill it out. Oh my goodness.
It's ridiculous.
Goodness, other agents. That's my 2 cents, but I strongly suggest you guys start using it, because to me, it gives me a peace of mind. I think it gives my clients a peace of mind that they have that. And as much as relationships are, there are other agents that aren't so ethical and have an open house. And if you aren't there with your client, oh my gosh, guess what? I bought a house. What? And you could have that happen to you too. And so anyway, but thank you so much. This is awesome, awesome class, Stephanie.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I don't know, like to Christine's point, to Chris's point, and everything, really, and then Louisa as well, and Jasmine, that really going, and this is part of their system, part of how they do business, etc. Right? And so this class here, or this mastermind brainstorming, like I said, is to get you all comfortable with that and understanding the value that you bring, right? And then 2, for the people that haven't done any transactions, like those of you that have been in my contract classes lately, know that is this everything that we've been preaching to? Like, hey, know your shizzle, right? Know your stuff, right? Because it will elevate you, and like to Chris's point, right? It will broaden the gap, right? the cream rises to the top, right? So might as well be the cream, right? So, I don't know, that's good.
And we have one of the, we have
Ah,
one of
go
the greatest brokers here who pours into us. So if you can't catch his class, go back to the replays. I mean, Rich has a like beyond passion for this industry and elevating us. And, you know, I might not win every buyer contract, but every person calls and says, every agent, what a clean offer you wrote. Oh my God, do you teach this? Do you this? Do you that? And it's all part of, you know, the package that I put together, but it's not for nothing. Those classes are gold
Yeah.
to us.
Yep. Okay, so we are winding down. That went by really fast. So I'd love to get any last comments, words of advice or whatever from the panelists and from Chris. So Alan, let's start with you.
Okay, so easy for me, is your confidence is a lot of it, because you have to make the decision. Do you want to work with these buyers? For me, and it's not always yes. Sometimes it's like, you know, these people were like complaining, like when I'm driving around and I'm like going, why do I want to work with people who I don't even like? And, you know, maybe I'll make some money, but this is like a red flag. You can see red flags a lot of times in listings and with buyers. And if you don't take heed to it, guess what? You're going to be crying a lot. Maybe you'll make some money, but it's going to take your blood and guts and your life from you for at least a month.
But then we have to get up.
That's all.
Awesome. Omid.
And I'd say in closing, just do it, right? You gotta
Yeah.
do it, just do it. And, you know, you got a lot of great colleagues and friends around you with a lot of knowledge. And I think it's one of those great times to like collaborate as a collective. And I'm not gonna be shy about it. I'm gonna start pushing it more. And if I'm getting good headway, I'd love to share with you. And if I'm not, I'll reach out to people that are doing it. So I'd say just start doing it. There's nothing wrong with that, you know, like, just go at it straight on.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Awesome. Thanks, Omid. Jasmine.
And in addition to all of that, create a system that's unique to you, talk, you know, your style, your vibe, the kind of clients you want to attract. There is nothing better than working with somebody who just gets you and the way you do things and vice versa. So I think taking the time to put together a system that, you know, however you want to do it, and do it with every client every time, regardless of the compensation, it will serve you so well.
No, I love that. Thank you, Linda.
Just, we cannot be afraid of the word no, because we will never, ever hear yes if we don't ask for the order and ask the question. So don't ever fear no.
How much did
That was
good?
good.
That's it.
Sales 101.
Get out of here.
And Mr. Chris Vogt.
So Linda, I love that last part you said about don't be afraid of no. And I'm actually gonna add to that.
Perfect.
And write this down. Prospecting solves everything.
Sure.
Prospecting solves everything. We're not gonna get every listing. We're not gonna get every buyer. We're not gonna get everything. And if we have 100 clients going at one time and we lose 30 of them, you still have 70. If you got 3 and you lose 2, you got 1, right? So this is the more is better. So I would say prospecting solves everything. So whatever you're doing on your lead generation, kick it up a notch, number one. I would also concur with whoever said a system. I would make sure that you know your system. So your buyer intake sheet, we call it something different. We have a pre buyer sheet that we send out that we ask them to fill out. Then we have our actual presentation. But I would line out your steps. I would start asking more questions, better questions, deeper questions. And the one question, and you can use this at open houses, you can use it wherever, is this. Let me ask you, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Seller, what criteria will you be using in selecting the agent you're going to work with? I love that question because most buyers and sellers don't even know how to answer the question. What criteria will you be using to select the agent you'll be working with? Okay, then you're going to have for them some really good answers because they're going to say whatever they're going to say, and you're going to say, great, let me ask you, are you also looking for somebody who knows the real estate paperwork inside and out, can negotiate effectively on your behalf and manage your transaction well, blah, 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 blah. They're going to say, yes, I want that. Yes, I want that. Yes, I want that.
Awesome.
And to Linda's point, there's a great, I mean, for book readers, there's a great book called Go For No. I would highly recommend it if you haven't read it. Really good book. So,
Yeah, if you haven't heard no, then you're not asking for a yes.
great book.
And that's on you, you know what I mean? But it should be no fear. The worst you're ever gonna hear is no. I mean, what if you got yes? Just think.
And you know, maybe not right now.
That's how you get it.
No,
Well-
be your neighbor, I don't understand or re-explain to me.
Places that I want for them.
All right, so here we are. Thank you so much to Linda, everybody that shared and everybody that participated. Just really love